G'day, everybody. I'm Jackson Jones from TheBiker.Bar. Thanks for joining me today on this continued discussion on motorcycle personal protective equipment. With me today is Ellen from MotoGirl and Joe from MotoDirect. This discussion focuses on motorcycle gloves. Welcome, Ellen and Joe.
Hello, thank you so much for having us. Yeah, I'm quite looking forward to chatting with you guys today about gloves and getting Joe's expert opinion on what we need to be looking for when we're buying them, and sort of what's the best for our riding style. So I think that's where I wanted to start our discussion, really. Obviously, I mean, you go in and people go out, I want either winter gloves or summer gloves, and different gloves can be suited to the sort of the different riding that they're doing. So let's say I'm walking in this time of year, let's say getting ready for summer. What do I want to be looking for when I walk in and want a summer glove effectively?
Yeah, I mean, so the good thing about, for me personally, gloves are a hugely personal piece of equipment, really. And what I really enjoy about summer gloves is the ergonomics that you get from a summer glove, in my opinion, often is a lot better than a winter glove. And if you look at your hand and just how many kind of joints there are in it, when we start to add things like thermal insulating layers or waterproofing layers, we thicken that glove up quite quickly, which is fine. That's what it's meant to do, and that's what it's all about. However, then that reduces your interaction with the motorcycle in some way, because you can't feel your clutch quite as well, you can't feel your brake quite as well, you can't feel your throttle. And that, as a manufacturer, that we are for RST, that is like the most difficult thing, is to try and balance that. Oh, let's have a really high performing glove with, let's have something that actually works on the motorcycle. So when you say, all right, we're going in and we're looking at summer gloves, like that's music to my ears. Like that's the glove that I personally want to wear. Okay. You know, so I like to look for the fit first of all. Again, because of the way that your hand is, basically the way we usually kind of size gloves is across this width here. But really, if you think that your hand can be wide, tall, you've got finger length, you've got finger thickness, there's a huge amount in there that we can't really equate for on just as simply looking at a size guide and going extra small, small, medium, whatever. So the first thing I personally look for is, I will put a glove on and I want to feel the glove come all the way into the back of my hand. I want to feel the glove, my fingers touching the ends, but not, you know, pressing into the ends. And I also want to make sure there's no excess material. There's nothing I've just got a glove here. There's nothing I hate worse than that. At the end of a glove with excess like material, it's the worst thing in the world for me. I like a nice thin palm. So again, that interaction with the controls being really comfortable. And I always look personally for a glove that's comfortable in this position. You're not using the bike in this position, you're using it in this position. A really good shop will probably either have a motorcycle or something similar where you can test the size of the gloves, or even better, they will let you go and, you know, as ridiculous as it sounds, right, go and interact with your bike. Okay, so just take your gloves outside. Oh yeah, I can feel those on the controls. They feel good. That would be my first port of call for a summer glove. Would be fit, would be you know, kind of ergonomics. I can feel the controls. And then if we're riding in, you know, depending on what country we're in, you know, or depending on what climate we're riding in, definitely I'd be looking for venting or something like that as well. We're really lucky now because of the technology that is in textiles, in, you know, and in leather, and the washers we put through them. You can get really high performance pieces that we've never really had access to before in the past. And so we've got a range of really vented gloves as well. That's if you're riding in really, really hot conditions in the summer, that's a really nice thing to be able to do. I personally, I have really poor circulation. So my body's really warm today. My hands are absolutely freezing. So I personally, like, just a single like race style glove like this is absolutely perfect for me. Leather, no, there's loads of protection in there. It's got all that kind of lovely fit that I need. But again, it's not going to, you know, it's giving me the right temperature use as well. So those are the kinds of things that I look for in a summer glove. Depending on your use on the motorcycle as well, a lot of people like, I've just got an example here, a short cuff glove. So this might depend on how your jacket is. Some people like a glove to go over the top of the jacket or underneath. You can't put that underneath your jacket is too big.
Yeah.
So if you want it to go underneath your jacket, that's nice and easy. Use that smaller cuff that you see there. So that might be a consideration, particularly with either summer or winter, I guess, but that might be a particular consideration you've got, that not having excessive amounts of material and stuff like that. So ergonomics, the temperature, the feel, the fit, cuff length. Yeah, those are the kinds of things that I'd be looking at in terms of picking a summer or a winter glove particularly. And of course, outside of all this, make sure it has the safety elements that you require as a user as well.
Yeah, I think that's what we find when people come in the shop. I'm the same as you. They go, oh, I want a summer glove. And I'm like, brilliant, because they're going to put it on. And chances are they'll probably wear it out the shop and ride away, that day with them. Whereas the winter glove, I mean, the ones that we've got, they're lovely. They're sort of like got a faux sheepskin lining. They're lovely and warm, completely 100% waterproof, leather. But that's it. They do require some wearing in. So people would put them on and go, oh, okay, they're a little bit stiff. But I would say just get home, wear them around the house. And like you said, sort of on your bike, sort of just getting used to them, because it just will be a slightly longer process. I guess, like we have with the leather jackets, it's not going to put it on and be like, oh gosh, my comfortable thing in the world. It does require wearing in. But I guess, the same sort of fitting and everything applies in that way. And we get, it's quite interesting when we get ladies coming in the store. A lot of ladies go, actually, I struggle, maybe like the thumb's a little bit too long. But also another one is that, ladies sometimes have longer nails as well. And we sometimes get ladies come in that have quite long nails, and we're like, oh, you've just got to be a little bit careful, because it can sort of hinder your riding there. So I always say, look, if you're going to be out riding sort of for a long time, keep your nails sort of short if you can, but it can affect the gloves, because what they don't want to do, I guess, is buy the glove fitting that, and then they're going to cut it down, it'll be too long. But what would you advise? We do get, and I struggle with it, is that people go, actually, I find it's a little bit too long in the thumb or in a certain finger at all. Where do you really want it to feel like it's pressing on the fingers?
I personally don't like I like to just feel the ends of the gloves. I don't want any more than that. And that's a really difficult thing to get. If you look at what we do with some of our gloves, so again, this is just an example. So you can see here on the inside, there's actually the seams sit on the inside here, but the outside here. So you just want to make sure that that seam might interact with your finger, make sure you've got some, like a little bit of space. You don't want it again, but that's part of the reason why we outstitch this seam, so that where you've got that curling round of your finger, you get a little bit more tension across the leather of the glove. It pushes into your finger a little bit more, and that, having it outstitched, creates a lot more comfort in there. So if you've got an outstitched finger, that creates a lot of comfort in a glove, and you can kind of rest the bed of your finger essentially more in the front of the glove. I would always want to just feel the front of the glove personally, and nothing more. If you're using a leather glove, like, we talk about this break-in, yeah, it could get a little bit longer in the length of the glove as well. So that's something to bear in mind. I have a personal tendency to take a little bit smaller than probably I am, that I measure, but then I'll really take some time to stretch it out to get that perfect fit. And it's like having a pair of shoes, isn't it, in that way? Like a really nice pair of leather boots or leather shoes, once they're worn in, they're beautiful, and that's where I go for that. With textiles, again, because they tend to be softer, you tend not to have to worry about that too much. And like you say, if you're going for a textile winter glove particularly, they often have a really nice liner, so you get no interaction with any kind of uncomfortable things at the ends of the finger, and they tend to be you can get a much more defined fit from those pieces. You're not having to worry about any pieces, because you've got like literally a whole, like you say in your case, sheepskin or whatever it is, beautiful kind of glove within the glove, so it makes it really comfortable.
I guess in that case, it is important then to actually go into a store and try them on, because it is a safety garment, I suppose. You want to make sure that it fits, and you're not just relying on that measurement across there, I suppose.
I mean, absolutely. For me personally, I would recommend any rider trying on any piece of safety gear to go into a shop, and a good shop will spend time with you getting it right. Because at the end of the day, if you have a good experience with that shop, you're going to come back to them, yes, of course. And if you're happy with your product for the life of your motorcycling, you're going to be much more likely to, enjoy your motorcycling. And that's what it's all about.
Yeah.
I personally, absolutely, I would always say, go into a shop, try it on. I would recommend that personally for any type of gear, whether it's boots, gloves, jeans, jacket, whatever. But again, because of the complexity of all this, I think that applies really strongly in the case of the ergonomics, being able to use the glove much more strongly. Go and try it on, because there's so many different, it's very similar with boots. There's so many different fit elements in this hand.
Yeah.
And like you're saying, Ellen, about females particularly, you know, a lot of the time a manufacturer won't necessarily consider what a female needs from a glove. They just take a men's glove, make it a little bit smaller. You know, if you look at fashion shoes, for example, you know, like go buy a pair of Doc Martens, go buy a pair of Doc Martens from men, go buy a pair of Doc Martens from women. They're completely different shapes. You can't just be, oh, well, I need a little bit of a smaller Doc Martens, I'll get the ladies. But no, it doesn't work like that. And that's exactly the idea we need to apply to motorcycle gear. And that is an individual thing as well. So 100%, one brand might not work for you. Within a brand, one model might not work for you. So have it outlaid in your head what you think you need, then try within that realm a few different gloves on. A good shop may also say to you, well, why do you need that? And then you may think, well, actually, maybe I don't need that, or maybe I haven't considered other options. But certainly that conversation and that trying on element, that's all about going to shop. 100% recommend going into shop, unless you know exactly it is what it is you want.
Yeah, well, absolutely. I think that's great advice, especially about that brand, that one model might not work, but definitely, you know, speak to the people in the shop, because they might be able to recommend something that you're after. You touched on before testing as well, and the safety, and obviously gloves, you know, they are a safety garment. We've spoken about in our other videos, obviously the markings on helmets and clothing, but I don't feel like gloves, it's not as widely spoken about. So what is it we want to be looking out for when we're going into a shop? You know, we find our perfect fitting pair of gloves, but what are the safety markings that we need to be looking out for? And what's the testing that goes on behind that?
Yeah. So when you go into a shop, when you want to try on a pair of gloves, and when you want a protective pair of gloves, because you just might want a pair of gloves just to keep your hands warm. Okay. You're not worried about how you fall off. Like, that's your choice. There is no legal requirement to have a set of gloves on that protect you. Okay. So it's not like helmets. Helmets are required. Gloves are not required. But if we're going into shop and we want a protective glove, the first thing you want to look for is the pictogram within the glove that says it is CE or CA UK approved. That is going to tell you that in the event of an accident, that glove has a level of safety. It will protect you in a certain way. Simple. Now, within that, there are two different kind of levels to glove safety. And there's also the addition of a knuckle protector on the level 1. On a level 2, which is a higher safety, a knuckle protector is required. So you will never see a level 2 non-knuckle protected glove, but you can get a level 1 without a knuckle protector. If I think to most of my knowledge, and this certainly isn't going to apply to everything, I'm sure there will be one out there. I can't think off the top of my head very easily of within the motorcycle realm, a level 1 glove that does not have a knuckle protection, because generally the consumer wants knuckle protection. It's seen to be fairly important in the motorcycle realm, which is fine. Historically, level 2 existed for what was called professional motorcyclists. Under the latest kind of approval, that has been dropped. But certainly it represents a higher standard. It's not that level 1 is a low standard and level 2 is a higher standard. It's that one's protective, one's very protective, but with that extra protection, you may be sacrificing, again, the ergonomics, because the thickness of the materials or the seams need to be double stitched potentially. There's a lot more force that has to go into a level 2 glove in order for it to be able to pass. So when you go into a shop, look for the pictogram. That means you know you've got a protective glove. If you want knuckle protection, make sure it says KP. If you want a level 2 glove, make sure it says level 2. And with that, it will say level 2 KP.
Well, can I just jump in there on that? Level 2 gloves are obviously stronger than your level 1 gloves. But what does that, and we all know that, but what does that mean in real terms as far as riding up the motorway? You know, am I safe in the level 1 gloves, you know, or do I need level 2?
100%, you are absolutely safe in level 1 gloves, no problems at all. And if I just refer back to the 2 examples that I've seen, there is our top level race glove from RST. It's one of the most widely used gloves by, sponsored and not sponsored riders. It's a very popular glove at racing. That's level 1 KP. That there is our lightest weight glove that I've got. And again, that is a level 1 KP.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we can all see that the differences between those 2 gloves will be quite significant, but they're both level 1 KP. So very importantly, you are absolutely safe in a level 1 glove, no problems at all. That level 2 just gives a discerning rider or somebody who maybe isn't bothered about ergonomics just a little bit of extra choice. For us as a manufacturer, that balance between a passive safety and an active safety element is a really difficult one to kind of meet. And what I mean by that is active safety is how the product performs in the event of a crash. And we know how it's going to do that through our testing, through real world examples. And the passive safety is how it performs when it's not in a crash. So for example, if you're riding along and you're thinking, my gloves are a little bit more uncomfortable, they're detracting away from your ride. Yeah. And that is a very important balance for us as a manufacturer, RST, to kind of meet. I spoke about this a little bit when we spoke about helmets, and it's certainly a consideration, particularly because of the complexities of your hand. It's a very important consideration for us, and it's a difficult one to meet. It's a difficult one for us to meet for level 2 and also being super comfortable. So we, level 1 absolutely is safe, to answer your question.
Yeah.
No, that's fantastic. I mean, Ina and I were chatting yesterday actually about sort of what we personally look for in gloves, and Ina said, she will not wear a pair of gloves if you've not got sort of the scaphoid protection there. And obviously you get different gloves that have maybe got a plastic across there, or a leather, like a material, sort of a padded material. What's the difference? Is there a benefit over one than the other, or what would you sort of recommend? And also I'm assuming that will really play a factor of how comfortable the glove is when you're wearing it.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a feature, again, that's difficult to get in there without affecting that passive safety that I was talking about too much. But it's definitely something that potentially delivers a lot of extra protection. If I just talk about the approvals, just briefly, when as part of the approval, what we do is we take the glove and we have what's called the impact abrasion test. So it would slam down into basically a piece of sandpaper, and it's impacting and then abrading. And the key area of the hand is that base of the hand here, where you have probably the most impact pressure, because the first thing most riders do is they put their hands out in front of them. Okay, that double layer of leather protects from that impaction, or double layer of any material protects from that impact, and then that abrasion to protect your skin as well as protect your bones as much as possible. Then what we do have is the addition of, on certain gloves, sorry, I've got this one going around, of this plastic piece that you see here. Okay, this is, as you say, like a scaphoid slider is something that we've used in the past. We tend to just use wrist protector now, because effectively in the base of your hand, you've got 5 bones. They're very, very small bones here, and they're very, very easy to break. Now, what happens when motorcyclists, cyclists, horse riders, skiers, anybody that's traveling forwards and fairly fast, when they fall, they put their hands out in front of them. And if they put their hands out in front of them, but the momentum of their body is too large, as they come down, they do this because their weight folds over their hand. I've done that before. I've broken my scaphoid, really, really annoying bone to break. And that folding breaks that bone. What a slider is trying to do, that we have here, is have a low coefficient of friction, so that when our hand does impact the floor, instead of gripping the floor and therefore folding in underneath us, it's allowed to slide out from under us so we don't fold our wrist, as well as reduce that initial impact. Okay.
Oh, okay.
That for me, for particularly, this is a race glove. Races fall off all the time. Races are probably better at falling off. They're a bit more instinctual about it, but certainly there's going to be times when things happen so quickly, you put your hands down in front of you. That is a great additional feature, but there's no specific testing for that plastic piece. But what we do have is this, you can see here, that impact abrasion piece that I'm talking about. So on this particular glove, we use kangaroo leather here. There's an additional kangaroo piece here. And then we've got a piece of Kevlar material that's Kevlar stitched in. All of the RST gloves, and I don't know, but I would hazard a guess that a lot of level 1 and level 2 gloves would need an additional material layer where that impact abrasion protection piece is tested to protect the base of your hand and from the impact and your skin, if that makes sense.
Right.
Oh, right. Okay, then. There we go. Well, that answers that. Thank you very much for all of that. Yeah, again, a bit like, you know, the helmet video we did, I feel like, you know, it's sort of a light bulb sort of moment with it all. But another sort of type of glove that I just wanted to really sort of briefly talk about, and it will be brief because I know that there's maybe not as much sort of behind them than there are the gloves we're wearing on the road, but off-roading gloves. Is there any testing required with those? Because obviously you put, you know, the gloves that you've been holding up there and a pair of your off-roading gloves, very different sort of pairs of gloves and made up of very different fabrics as well. So are there any requirements for off-roading gloves? And is there anything you would suggest looking out for? Like, you know, you mentioned the knuckles and things like that.
Absolutely not. There's no requirement for an off-road glove, you know, at all. So if you go race a motocross, unless your specific race body said we needed a protective glove as part of your gear, there is no requirement for off-road racing. You know, I've been, you know, practicing on dirt track. You know, you turn up, you pay your money, go and have some fun. That's fine. Within that, a manufacturer of off-road specific gear will probably have non-CE approved as well as CE approved, just to give the consumer a bit of choice. Now, if we look at like motocrossers, you know, enduro riders, because what they do is very, very physical and they're moving about a lot more than a road rider would, the ergonomics are extra important to them, which is why in the past they may not have chose an approved glove. But certainly with, as we see more now within the motorcycle industry in general, more crossover happening. So more people coming over to adventure bikes from both the road and the off-road. And the nature of those types of riding, it could be that somebody wants to choose now a CE approved glove or a CA approved glove in some way so that they know they're getting protection. Certainly they're gonna have to sacrifice maybe some of the ergonomics. I mean, I don't know if you've ever like worn motocross style gloves. Some of them are so super fine, and it's brilliant if you're in a really hot day, and it's really nice. Yeah, but you fall off, you're probably not going to do a huge amount.
Yeah.
But as we get this more blended motorcycling and lots of people taking different styles of motorcycling, I can see there's definitely going to be like a, you know, somebody riding a big GS is going to be quite happy to take their road style of gloves, their CE approved gloves, maybe take a lighter one, maybe something like this, but absolutely use it on those green lanes and on those fire roads, you know, because they appreciate the extra protection. They've got that, you know, that knuckle protection. You've got some energy absorption there. I can absolutely see there being a crossover. But at the minute, as far as I'm aware, there's no requirement for a motocross rider, for an enduro rider to use an approved glove.
Right, okay.
So Joe, regardless of testing standard, whether it be CE or ANSI like they use in North America, what's the key takeaway regarding the selection of motorcycle gloves that people listening today should know?
Key takeaway is absolutely make sure you are comfortable in a glove for how you're going to use it. I remember, just a brief story if I may, I remember when I first started motorcycling, I was traveling a long way to see somebody and it was snowing. And my hands had got so cold and so uncomfortable from the soggy glove that I accidentally ran a red light. Now, I was lucky, I was very safe. It was, you know, there was not a lot of traffic around. I couldn't grip my brake strong enough to stop my bike, right? How bad is that?
Yeah, wow.
It's really important. It's really important that you get one that's suiting your needs. If you're only riding in the hot summer days, no problems. Don't worry about that. Get one that fits you, that's comfortable, and that absolutely meets your safety requirements. If you're riding on track, if you're racing, that is probably not going to be as suitable as something like that. So that would be my key takeaway. I'm going to a shop. Go try some on. Go talk to somebody who knows what they're talking about.
Oh, brilliant. Thank you so much, Joe. That's, yeah, really helpful. And I'm sure a lot of the people watching this will have learned quite a lot from today's video. Thank you.
Yeah,
You're more than
brilliant.
welcome. And thanks for coming back.
Thanks, Joe.
Thank you
And
so
thanks
much.
everyone today for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, all that kind of jazz, and look out for the next video in the series. See you soon.
Thanks. Bye.
Cheers, guys. Bye-bye.